I have bipolar 2 disorder.
I was diagnosed with a major depressive disorder with psychosis.
I became very socially anxious. I also became agoraphobic.
Depression, anxiety has always been basically my general diagnosis.
It's like you're in this hole and you can't get out. There is just no light coming in.
It was like something in my brain just broke.
Overall, we still are faced with about 1 in 5 young people over the course of their adolescence will either have or develop a mental disorder. That's a lot of kids.
My mom suffers from bipolar disorder. It's something that has given me a lot of appreciation for the fact that so many of us have challenges with mental illness or have loved ones who have challenges with mental illness.
Everybody knows somebody who has a problem, like 1 in 5. Like everyone knows someone. Everyone has a family member, or it's them, or it's their, it's their child, or it's their lover, or whatever.
This feels like so long ago.
I stopped kind of caring about school and dance. I just kind of finished off my year, just kind of barely. And then I would say in the summer I started cutting.
It took us quite a while before we realized that it wasn't just the normal teenager drama type of stuff that was going on.
It started off with 1 small cut, and then it moved to 3 or 4, and then it eventually moved to like 20, 30, 40, 50 cuts.
The day of my 16th birthday is when it became like very much painfully evident that there was like a problem, and I didn't know what mental illness was. And I cried the entire day, like hysterically. I was so upset. I felt like the world was closing in on me. It was terrible. And that's when I started to cut myself. That's when I was 16.
I was just trying to be a normal kid at school because I came home to a situation that was not normal. Over time, I just started to become even more depressed, more socially anxious.
I did go through very, very deep depression for a number of years, maybe more than 5 years. And it was very, very traumatic for Asante.
As a parent, I mean, the biggest thing that we struggled with is we just didn't get it. We always thought we were the perfect family, and we just couldn't believe it. As a parent, that's probably the biggest hurdle that we had to go through, was really understanding this isn't make-believe, this isn't just a teenage thing. It's something real. You can't see it, but it's very, very real, very, very real to her.
Nobody really understands it. You can tell people that what's happening. You can say, well, my daughter's cutting herself, that she's having anxiety attacks. She's had to go into the mental hospital for a while. She's really stressed out. And they say, oh, that's terrible. They don't get it. And it's not like they don't want to, they just don't. And why would they?
People who have a mental disorder themselves feel ashamed about it. And that extends to families. So often in families, if there is a family member who has a mental disorder, people won't talk about it. It's not as easy to talk about as if someone has diabetes or they've broken a leg.
It's not like you have a lump here or a bump there, and you can show somebody that this hurts and that hurts. It's the invisible illness.
It was like, why don't you just get better? Why don't you just snap out of it? And I would say, what's wrong with me? But no one really understood it. So I stopped saying what was wrong with me. They just kind of threw it back in my face and made me feel like a bad person for even having anything wrong with me. And it's funny because all of that was stigma. And it just made me shrink into my own space even more and isolate myself even more.
Many people talk about this who have lived with mental illness, and some of them say that the experience of the stigma is at times more painful than the disorder itself. People are very, very quick to judge individuals with mental illnesses and are very, very quick to make definitive and often very erroneous statements about what can be helpful and what can't be helpful. Well, we can't give that child a medication because, oh, we're just over-medicating the child. We would never say that for a kid with diabetes. We wouldn't say that for a kid with asthma, but it's okay to say that for a kid with mental disorder. That's also another kind of stigma. So not only don't we treat people with respect, we don't respect their needs for treatment.
I think the stigma around mental illness comes from a very archaic way of thinking about mental illness. Nobody considers that someone who needs insulin shots because they're a diabetic is somehow weak, and yet someone who suffers from a chemical imbalance in the brain is, however, perceived as weak.
Everything we are, everything we do, how we behave, how we think, how we feel, they're all functions of our brains. And when our brains aren't working properly, when they get ill, and there's no reason the brain doesn't get ill like your pancreas does or your heart does or whatever, that what we see is a mental illness. I'm still gobsmacked at how many people haven't put together the fact that a mental illness is really a dysfunction of normal brain functioning.
Finally went to go see the psychiatrist. She listened to me for a whole hour, and then she was like, yeah, you do have bipolar 2 disorder. You can totally see this in your chart. It was the worst and best diagnosis to get, because it was like, okay, part of it was like, this is chronic. I feel like my life is over. And the other part was, oh my God, someone's gonna help me.
I booked an appointment with my family doctor, who was a really cool guy. He hooked me up with a counselor, and I pretty much started seeing her immediately. We would sit there and talk, and I would leave and I'd feel better. And I don't know how it happened, but it's like I woke up one day and I was like, I'm not depressed anymore.
I had to realize that I wanted to get better for me, not just because everyone else was saying, oh, I really hope you get through this. So you really have to step up, and you really have to look inside yourself and say that things will get better, and they do get better.
Through family counseling, we learned a lot about communicating with each other. And it's incredible, actually, how much we've learned there. And we've also learned how much we don't know about each other.
When we try to work, help, be part of a life of someone who has a mental illness, then we have to realize that it's all those parts of the life, because the brain works at every single one of those levels. So if you need to have help with employment, well, that's what we do. If you need extra help or specific strategies to do better at school, that's what we do.
The school system has done a number of things. I mean, they've met with us, they've met with their counselors. They've said, how can we help? How can we do things? How do we recognize when Alyshia's in this sort of situation? And they've just been absolutely fantastic, way more than we could ever have dreamed of. We didn't know that a school system could react like that.
Can you guys,
As a former high school teacher, I always knew what you were teaching was much less important than how you were teaching and how you empowered your students to become learners. Doing that without involving, mental health, and without, encouraging people to think about, how their brain functions, but how their friends' brains function. I mean, we give people basic, numeric literacy. We give them basic social literacy. I think understanding mental illness is something that I think every citizen needs to have.
I see mental health as a basic human right, the same way I see all health as a basic human right. It's not different. And we have to stop talking about it as if it is different.
When I was depressed, I never felt like I would be this happy. And to be this satisfied with my life. And it's a great feeling, and I'm definitely extremely grateful for the happiness I have now and every single person along the way who has been a part of it.
I never thought I ever had the possibility to do this well. I didn't used to think I had a future. The fact that I have a future, and it's almost like a normal person's future, like I have a relationship and I play sports and like I go to school and I have a job, like it blows my mind.
I think it's kind of hard to accept, like, oh, I actually have an illness or there's something wrong with me. But at the same time, I find it helped me label myself as that's what I have and that's what I'm dealing with. And a lot of people share the same kind of feelings.
The most important thing, you know, for the child or for the teenager is really to talk to somebody and not keep it in, and to realize there's a lot of kids going through this stuff. It is not abnormal, and that they're not alone.
You gotta tell somebody. And you also have to realize that you might not get it all done in one shot. I went through several therapists and several different therapies, you know, with different medications before I got a handle on it. You have to be patient and know that this is an illness, it's not you.
It takes a lot of bravery and strength for a lot of people to even reach out to say, hey, I'm sick, I need help.
There's always someone, and often it will be the person that really surprises you. You know, it could be that guidance counselor or the music teacher or like the bus driver. Like, you'd really be surprised by the people who actually will really comfort with you and really be compassionate. But you're never gonna get that help and that support until you are open enough to get it. If you just close yourself off and say, this isn't happening, and I hate myself, it won't be there.
There is a good future for you. Part of your being able to walk into that future is dependent on the decisions you make about yourself today. And if you think that you may have a mental illness, going to get help from someone who can give you the help you need is something that you can be in control of. You may not be in control of all those things that are happening in your environment, and you may not be in control of things that people are doing to you, but you are in control of one important thing, and that is going to get help for you to the right person. Find a trusted adult, find someone you can speak with, and get the help that you need. That's under your control, and that is something that you can do for your future.
Nobody's going to judge you as any less for having had, you know, challenges or fears or worries or insecurities or depressions or manic periods or panic attacks. These are things that we can help you with, because ultimately you are very valuable to us. We need you to be whatever it is you need to be, the great artist, the passionate thinker, the great mathematician, the community activist, the teacher, whatever it is in your path, we need to help you achieve that. That's what your teachers are there for. That's what, you know, the school community's there for. That's what the medical community is there for. Nobody needs to suffer alone and in silence anymore.